Go. Let's go first. Let's go.
Carentan, the famous 101st Airborne attack to seize this vital transport hub. But have you ever wanted to see the real locations where the Allies fought and understand the larger attack in detail from a divisional level? Well, in this video, I'll show you an in-depth look at the attack using animations and aerial imagery from 1944 to explain who the real heroes of Carentan were. Welcome back to Normandy and to the town of Carentan. It's located to the west of the lodgement and it is near familiar locations that I've covered before, such as Saint-Côme-du-Mont and Sainte-Marie-du-Mont. On D-Day, Carentan was surrounded by flooded fields, creating a type of island. On the 10th of July 1944, Lieutenant Colonel Cole of the 3rd Battalion 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment attacked across a series of bridges along a causeway which later became known as Purple Heart Lane. Now that attack is not covered in this video.
I'm Colonel R.G. Cole, Lieutenant Colonel R.G. Cole, 3rd Battalion 502nd Parachute Infantry, 101st Airborne Division. We were ordered on June 10th to come up this road, take Carentan, and proceed some mile and a half beyond Carentan to a point called La Bellerie.
Instead, we're going to focus on the events after this, the break-in to Carentan. We're going to start by looking at the 506th, who conducted preliminary moves to maneuver to the south of Carentan. At H-hour, they would attack in conjunction with other elements who would launch from the north, a type of pincer. And this is part of the famous Easy Company attack from Band of Brothers. You may recall in the series that Easy Company gets lost as they head south. Well, this is the route that we believe they took, and it's largely following the D971. Now this route looks reasonably straightforward, but they were at this stage still in mixed formations from the missed jump on D-Day, and they were also navigating at night. Now they headed south, but remember the territory was still occupied by German forces, and they did encounter some resistance along the way. Now Dog Company would take the northern road to attack towards the train tracks, and Easy Company would take the southern parallel road to secure a Y junction just south of Carentan.
So I'm stood right on the road that Major Dick Winters and Easy Company charged down to get into Carentan. And behind me, you should be able to make out a small building at the crossroads. And it was in that crossroads that machine gun, which was positioned in the upper story window, was firing up this road, was raking this road with machine gun fire, which was pinning the soldiers to either side of the road. They rushed back into these drainage ditches which used to exist on the side of the road, and it was here that Major Winters was running back and forth across the road, kicking his soldiers up the arse, shouting at them, imploring them to get after the offensive, to keep moving, otherwise they were going to die where they were sat. Now at the side of the road were these drainage ditches. The road was obviously much more cambered in 1944, allowing for the rainwater to wash off either side. They have been filled in a lot since 1944. These were much deeper, but this is where the soldiers took cover. This is where they hid from that machine gun fire, which was coming from the building straight ahead at the crossroads. One machine gun held up the company. Now, in the series Band of Brothers, they make it appear as though Easy Company is the main thrust of the attack and that Major Winters is the only one who's attacking into Carentan. But in reality, there was a parallel attack from Dog Company just further to the north on a parallel road. And the reason why Winters was so keen to get Easy Company moving was because he didn't want Dog Company to become isolated. They had to remain balanced.
It's quite eerie walking down this road, thinking that members of Easy Company ran down this road during the attack. They were running towards the bullets, running towards the machine gun position so they could overwhelm it and clear the house. And just try to put yourself in their boots.
So now looking back at the road that Easy Company came down, you can see how it does rise away. There is a hill to it, but it has been leveled out, as I said. But they came running down this road in order to clear this building. This is the building that was occupied by the Germans, which had a machine gun in that middle window that you can see, perfectly sighted to aim up the road. And it was that machine gun that held up the whole of Easy Company. Once they cleared this building, their job was not over by any stretch. They then had to advance down this road into Carentan. They had to link up with Dog Company and then push north into the town. So they were now approaching the railway bridge and the crossing there. And it's from there that they would push into the town proper. Because although the town has expanded lots and lots and lots since 1944, actually the real town centre didn't occur until you reached the train tracks. So once they crossed this railway track, they would then be inside Carentan. Carentan is just there, and this train track had, as I said, a level crossing that went just across here. Now, across from here, you can see that there's a main road which goes up into the town. And this was a prominent crossroads in 1944, just as it is today. And the Germans knew this, and so they had artillery and their mortars aiming at this location, what we call a DF. And that meant that if it's a prominent crossroads to the Allies, which they want to secure, then it's obviously going to be to the enemy as well. So as soon as they knew that the Allies had reached the southern end of town, they started to rain down on this area with mortars, and it's where Colward Lipton, actually in the series Band of Brothers, was wounded. He was wounded right here by artillery.
The Easy Company were not actually the first troops to break into Carentan. There was another attack which occurred in the north, and these were glider infantry, not paratroopers, which is perhaps why you've not heard much about them. But the 327th and the 401st Glider Infantry Regiments led the charge along the Carentan Canal. The Germans had largely evacuated the town, but they did leave machine guns at locations to dominate approach routes and to delay the attack.
So we're stood here at the canal, which runs from the north to the south in towards Carentan. So the sea is that way towards Utah Beach, and Carentan is that way. Now, it was along this stretch of ground here and the other side of the canal where the Allies attacked from the north to get into Carentan, to break into Carentan on this side. And that job was left to the 327th Glider Infantry Regiment, and it was their G Company that did this. They were on the far side of the bank. On this side was H Company of the 401st. Now, they'd already crossed the canal, they'd already gotten across, and that's a story for another day, how they managed to do that. But they were attacking in parallel, moving down this way. And we'll talk about now how their attack completely faltered as they approached Carentan, where they became fixed by German machine gun fire and mortars.
Now, these are the German locations on the aerial photographs. Today, these areas look pristine and stunning in the autumn light, almost a bit of a tourist area, but it's just across this canal and in these stone buildings that the Germans built their strong points. These positions were cleared by bazookas and hand-to-hand fighting by the glidermen. So now let's look at the attack from the east over the Veertort Canal, protecting Carentan from the north and from the east. A perfect defensive position where the only way to break into the town was across two narrow bridges. Almost impossible.
Now, we're looking out of town towards the east, and this is the route that the 327th took to try and get into Carentan. But they came down that hill, approached down this road, and they advanced either side of the road. So one battalion, the 1st Battalion was on the left-hand side, and the 2nd Battalion was on the right-hand side, and they used the road as the sort of inter-battalion boundary. And they advanced down this way towards the river. We're going to head that way now. So this is the original route that they took, although back in 1944, this was heavily contested. The Germans were all over this area, trying to delay the Allied advance. But today, the route has bypassed this area, for obvious reasons that you'll see in a moment. And the route now goes further to the south of here. But this is the bridging location that they took to try and get into Carentan, to try and get over this obstacle. And you'll see exactly what I mean when I get to the top of this hill here, and you can see the river. So this is what they had to try and cross, and in order to do that, they had to cross this bridge. There's actually a then and now picture that I can take from this location, so we're going to try and do that now. Let's see if I've matched that up. I think that's pretty good. It's really windy today. I'm sorry if you're picking up the wind on the mic. Let's see if I can fix that afterwards. But the 327th Glider Infantry Regiment had to attack this location. They had to get across the bridge to force a break-in to the eastern side of town, or the northeastern side of town as it were. But the fighting here was so fierce, and they were actually pinned down for a long time. The bridge was destroyed or damaged, which meant that they had to delay to wait for it to be repaired. And so the attack from this side actually faltered. It wasn't as successful as they might have hoped.
The fighting that occurred here was some of the toughest fighting that the 101st Airborne ever faced in terms of restrictions of the canal. Indeed, the attack failed, and they never crossed the canal until the town was already secured. You could say this was a failure. So we've seen the break-in, but let's go back to Easy Company and to Rue Holgate, the attack into town. As we head up Rue Holgate towards the town centre, Easy Company faced small pockets of resistance fighting house to house, but it was predominantly machine guns placed sporadically throughout the town and snipers, riflemen who could take pot shots at people. Many buildings lay in ruins, but much of this was actually caused by American preliminary bombardments. The Fallschirmjäger had positioned machine guns and snipers in the upper stories and behind all the rubble, and the American glider troops had to fight house by house using grenades and bazookas to clear out the positions. Mortar fire fell constantly, we're told. The cobblestones were cratered and slick with dust and debris. Now, do you remember this famous scene from the series? I'm going to show you where that happened, and it was in the Place de la République, and yes, I know my pronunciation is terrible, but you can always tell me in the comments how bad my French is. Edward Tipper was wounded by mortar fire, or perhaps artillery fire, as he entered this courtyard. And to think that it happened here is pretty incredible. Now, despite the really quite horrible injuries that you can see in the series Band of Brothers, Tipper would go on to live a full life and live to be an old man, having a beautiful family as well.
Looking good, Tip. You? You're looking real good. Come here, buddy. You gotta sit down. Come here.
So we'll now head into the Place itself, and I've filmed a few times here before where you can see my then and now video, for example, and you can also see a video on a really tragic story that happened in this area when they were doing a medals parade, and I'll leave links to that up in the video description.
Shall be without end. Amen. Crazy fools, the Irish. You should know.
Now, this iconic arcade is replicated in the series. And here is a look at some of the damage that you can see in Carentan, which really did suffer terribly. So the operation to capture Carentan worked because multiple pressure points forced the Germans to thin and reorientate their defence. The glider infantry closed on the canal and the bridges, and the paratroopers headed in from the south. They pushed from the south towards the town, and the artillery and naval gunfire suppressed like pockets of resistance by the Germans. It was not clean and it was not elegant. It was absolutely brutal, and at times it was confusing. But by late morning, the southern and the northern forces had met in the marketplace and they had secured Carentan. The Allies had linked Utah and Omaha beaches into one continuous beachhead.